I'm Alina, I'm 38, and at 8 years old my father showed up at school with a new car and a promise. We're going to celebrate your birthday, princess. Just one day, your mother knows. I believed him, I got in the car, and I didn't see my mother again for 15 years. My father took me to another country, changed my name, changed my age, enrolled me in a school where no one asked questions. He told me my mother had died, that she didn't want me, that she had abandoned me. For 15 years, I lived in a house where I was the special daughter, where my father bought me everything, where I couldn't have friends, where I couldn't go out alone, where my bedroom door had a lock on the outside. At 23, I found a letter in his drawer. It was from my mother, dated 14 years ago. Roberto, give me back my daughter. I won't press charges if you bring her back. I just want to see her. I'm sick. I don't know how much time I have left. The letter had a photograph. My mother in a hospital with a tube, smiling. Beside me in the photo was an 8-year-old girl. Me, I didn't remember her. I didn't remember her face. I didn't remember her name. But on the back she had written, Alina, my love, if you ever find this, look for Maria at the bakery on the corner of our house. She knows everything. I waited for you. I still wait for you, even if it's in dreams. My mother died 6 months after that letter. I never knew, I never searched for her, I never got to say goodbye, but Maria is still at the bakery. And I, at 38 for the first time, am going to buy bread. I grew up in a house where love was a locked door. My father, Roberto, was a businessman who had built his fortune through connections, through influence, through the careful cultivation of relationships with people who could be useful. He was charming, generous, the kind of man who remembered birthdays, who sent flowers, who appeared at events with the perfect gift and the perfect smile. He was also controlling, obsessive, unable to accept that anything he wanted could be denied to him. My mother, Laura, was a teacher. Quiet, patient, the kind of woman who listened more than she spoke, who observed more than she demanded, who had learned to survive in a marriage with a man who needed to possess everything he touched. She had tried to leave him when I was 4, when his controlling behavior became unbearable, when his jealousy and his rage and his need to monitor her every movement made life impossible. The divorce was brutal. Roberto fought for custody with the desperation of a man who couldn't bear to lose, not because he loved me, but because I was something that belonged to him, something that Laura was trying to take, something that he needed to possess to prove that he had won. The court awarded custody to Laura, based on evidence of Roberto's violence, his instability, his inability to prioritize my well-being over his need for control. Roberto didn't accept the verdict. He appealed, he delayed, he used every legal maneuver to extend the process, to exhaust Laura's resources, to demonstrate that he could not be defeated by a system that he believed was biased against him. And when the legal process failed, he turned to other methods. For 2 years he planned. He learned Laura's schedule, my school hours, the routes we took, the people we saw. He befriended a teacher at my school, a woman who was struggling with debt, who accepted his money in exchange for information, for access, for the willingness to look away when necessary. He prepared documents. A fake passport for me, a fake birth certificate, a fake identity that would allow him to cross borders without questions, to enroll me in schools without verification, to create a new life that would be untraceable. The day of my 8th birthday, Roberto appeared at school in a new car, a shiny red vehicle that I had never seen before, filled with presents and balloons, and the promise of a celebration that seemed magical, extraordinary, the kind of event that a father would organize for a daughter he loved. He told me that Laura knew, that she had approved, that this was a special surprise for my special day. I believed him. I was 8, trusting, excited by the presents and the attention and the possibility of adventure. I got in the car, waving goodbye to my friends, to my teacher, to the life that I thought would be waiting for me when I returned. We drove. For hours, then for days, through landscapes that changed from familiar to strange, through languages that I didn't recognize, through borders that Roberto crossed with documents that no one questioned, that no one verified, that no one suspected were false. He was charming, confident, the kind of man who could make officials believe whatever he wanted them to believe. I asked about my mother. When would we see her? When would we return? Roberto told me that she was busy, that she had work, that she would join us later. Then he told me that she was sick, that she was in a hospital, that we couldn't visit because she needed rest. Then he told me that she had died, that the sickness had been worse than expected, that she was gone and we couldn't go back because there was nothing to go back to. I cried, I screamed. I demanded to return to see her, to say goodbye, to confirm that this was true. Roberto held me, comforted me, told me that he understood, that he was sad too, that we would build a new life together, that I was his special daughter, his princess, the only person he had left. The new life was in a country I didn't know, in a house that was large and empty, in a room that was beautiful and locked. Roberto changed my name to Carmen, his mother's name, another layer of possession, another way of erasing who I had been and replacing me with who he wanted me to be. He changed my age, making me 2 years younger, complicating any search that might be conducted, any database that might be checked, any investigation that might find me. He enrolled me in a private school where the children were rich and isolated, and no one asked questions about the new girl who didn't speak the language well, who had no friends, who was always accompanied by her father, who never had playdates or sleepovers or the normal interactions of childhood. The teachers saw a wealthy man with his beloved daughter, a devoted parent protecting his child from a world that had taken her mother. They didn't see the lock on the bedroom door, the monitoring of every movement, the isolation that was not protection but imprisonment. I grew up in that house. Years accumulated, each one marked by the gradual erosion of memory, of identity, of the girl I had been before Roberto took me. I learned to be Carmen, to answer to that name, to perform the role of the special daughter who was grateful for her father's devotion, who understood that his restrictions were love, that his control was care, that his presence was protection from a world that had already taken everything from me, but I was always watched. Roberto hired tutors instead of allowing me to attend regular school. He selected my clothes, my activities, my reading material. He checked my phone, my computer, my diary. He was always there, always present, always explaining that this was necessary, that the world was dangerous, that without him I would be lost, abandoned, destroyed. I tried to make friends. A girl at school, Maria, who smiled at me, who invited me to her house, who offered the possibility of connection that I craved. Roberto found out. He visited Maria's parents, charming, concerned, explaining that I was fragile, that I needed careful handling, that contact with other children might be overwhelming. Maria stopped inviting me. Her parents stopped allowing it. I learned not to try. At 12, I found a photograph. Roberto had forgotten to hide it, had left it in a drawer that he thought was secure, that I had learned to open. The photograph showed me with a woman I didn't recognize. We were at a beach, smiling, holding hands, wearing matching swimsuits. The woman had my eyes, my smile, my way of holding my head. On the back, in handwriting I didn't know, Elena and Laura, summer 2014. Elena. The name was familiar, distant, like a dream that I couldn't quite remember. Laura. The name meant nothing, everything, something that stirred feelings I couldn't name. I confronted Roberto. Not directly, I had learned to be careful, to gather information, to present questions as curiosity rather than challenge. I asked about the photograph, the woman, the name. An old friend, he said. From before, someone who died like your mother. You don't remember her, you were very young. But I did remember, or rather, I didn't remember, but I felt something. A connection, a recognition, a sense that the woman in the photograph was not an old friend, was not someone who had died, was someone important, someone central, someone who had been erased from my life as thoroughly as my original name. At 15, I tried to escape. I had planned for months, saving money from the allowance that Roberto gave me, learning the bus routes, identifying the places where I could go, the people who might help. I packed a bag, wrote a note, left it on my bed where Roberto would find it. He found me before I reached the bus station. Not through violence, but through the emotional manipulation that was his true weapon. He cried, he begged. He explained that he was only trying to protect me, that the world was dangerous, that without him I would be lost, that my mother had sold me, that he had bought me, that he had saved me from a fate worse than anything I could imagine. He showed me documents. Letters, he said, from my mother, proving that she had abandoned me, that she had taken money, that she had never loved me. I didn't believe them completely, but I didn't have the resources to verify, the connections to investigate, the confidence to trust my own judgment over his performance of certainty. I returned to the house, to the locked door, to the life that was not life. I became more compliant, more careful, more skilled at hiding my thoughts, my feelings, my growing certainty that something was wrong, that my history was not what Roberto claimed, that my mother was not dead, that I was not saved but stolen. At 18, Roberto allowed me to attend university. Not abroad, not far away, but a local institution where he could monitor, where he could visit, where he could maintain the control that had defined my entire existence. I studied psychology, drawn to questions of identity, of trauma, of the ways that children survive impossible situations, that they construct selves from fragments, that they continue to function despite the destruction of everything that should have supported them. I was good at it. I understood the material not as theory but as experience, as the description of my own life, as the explanation of symptoms that I had always considered normal, that I had never recognized as damage. The dissociation, the memory gaps, the difficulty with trust, the simultaneous craving for and fear of connection, these were not personality traits. They were survival mechanisms, adaptations to a childhood that had been stolen from me. At 23, I was working in Roberto's business, managing documents, handling correspondence, performing the role of the devoted daughter who was being prepared to inherit his empire. I had access to his office, his files, his secrets. I used that access carefully, gradually, gathering information without triggering suspicion, building a picture of the man who had controlled my entire life. I found the letter on a Tuesday. Roberto was traveling, a business trip that would keep him away for 3 days, the longest absence he had allowed in years. I was organizing his files, performing the diligence that he expected, when I found the drawer that was different, that was locked more securely, that contained things he didn't want me to see. The letter was from Laura, my mother, dated 14 years ago when I would have been 9, when I had been with Roberto for 1 year, when I was still learning to be Carmen, when I still cried myself to sleep for the mother who was dead, who didn't want me, who had abandoned me. Roberto, the letter began. Give me back my daughter. I won't press charges if you bring her back. I just want to see her. I'm sick. I don't know how much time I have left. The handwriting was weak, trembling, the writing of someone who was exhausted, who was desperate, who had tried everything and was reduced to begging the man who had stolen her child. The letter continued for pages, describing the search, the legal efforts, the years of trying to find me, to reach me, to bring me home. I know you have her, Laura wrote. I know she's alive. I know you've changed her name, her age, her history. I don't care. I just want to see her, to touch her, to tell her that I love her, that I never stopped looking, that I never stopped hoping. The letter included a photograph. Laura in a hospital bed with tubes and monitors and the visible evidence of illness that was consuming her. She was smiling despite everything, a smile that was familiar, that I recognized from the photograph I had found years ago, that was mine, that was the smile I saw in mirrors without understanding its origin. Beside her, in the photograph, was a girl, me, 8 years old, wearing a dress I didn't remember, holding Laura's hand, smiling at the camera with the innocence of a child who didn't know that this would be the last photograph, the last memory, the last proof of a relationship that was about to be destroyed. On the back of the photograph, in Laura's handwriting, Elena, my love, if you ever find this, look for Maria at the bakery on the corner of our house. She knows everything. I waited for you. I still wait for you, even if it's in dreams. I read the letter 100 times. I held the photograph until my hands shook. I sat in Roberto's office, surrounded by the evidence of his success, his control, his possession, and I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding together for 15 years, something that was not strength but survival, not acceptance but denial. I didn't confront Roberto, not yet. I needed more information, more evidence, more understanding of what had been done to me, to Laura, to the life that had been stolen from both of us. I searched his files, found more documents, more letters, more proof of the systematic deception that had defined my existence. I found that Laura had died 6 months after writing the letter, that Roberto had known, had received notification, had kept it from me, that he had allowed me to continue believing that my mother was the one who had abandoned me, when the truth was that she had spent her final years searching for me, begging for me, dying without the chance to see me again. I found Maria. The bakery was still there, on the corner of a street that I didn't remember but recognized from the photographs, from the descriptions, from the memories that were beginning to surface despite Roberto's erasure. Maria was 70, still working, still waiting, still preserving the story that Laura had entrusted to her. She recognized me immediately. Not because I looked the same, I didn't. I was older, changed, damaged in ways that were visible, but because she had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it, hoping against hope that Laura's daughter would eventually find her way home. Elena, she said, and the name was like a key turning in a lock, like water after drought, like the return of something that had been lost so long that its absence had become normal. I waited for you. Your mother waited for you. We all waited. Maria had everything. Letters that Laura had written but never sent, knowing that Roberto would intercept them. Photographs from my childhood, from the life that had been erased, from the family that had been destroyed. The address of Laura's grave, where she had been buried without me, where she had been mourned by people who didn't know that her daughter was alive, that she had been stolen, that she had never stopped being searched for. I visited the grave. I stood before the stone that bore Laura's name, the dates of her birth and death, the brief inscription that she had chosen, Mother of Alina, waiting for her return. I spoke to her, knowing that she couldn't answer, that the conversation I needed was impossible, that the reconciliation I wanted would never happen. I told her about my life, about Roberto, about the years of isolation and control, and the slow destruction of everything that I had been. I told her about the name change, the age change, the systematic erasure that had made me Carmen instead of Alina, that had made me a prisoner instead of a daughter, that had made me believe that she was dead when she was alive, that she didn't want me when she was searching, that she had abandoned me when she was begging for my return. I cried. For the first time since I was 8, I cried for my mother, not for the dead woman that Roberto had invented, but for the living woman who had loved me, who had searched for me, who had died without knowing that I was alive, that I had not forgotten her, that I had never stopped being her daughter despite everything that had been done to erase that connection. But I didn't stop at crying. I didn't stop at mourning. I used the information that María had given me, the documents that Roberto had hidden, the evidence that I had accumulated over years of careful searching, to build a case, to create a foundation, to transform my personal tragedy into something that could protect others. I found that Roberto had done this before. Not just to me, but to other children in other countries, with other mothers who had lost custody, who had been denied their rights, who had been told that their children were dead or abandoned when they had been stolen by a man who couldn't bear to lose, who believed that possession was love, who used his wealth and his connections to create a network of stolen children, hidden identities, destroyed families. I contacted them. 2 other women now in their 30s who had been Carmen in other countries, who had been told that their mothers were dead, who had discovered the truth through their own searching, their own courage, their own refusal to accept the lies that had been imposed on them. We formed a network. Not for revenge, though revenge was tempting, but for protection, for prevention, for the transformation of our individual tragedies into collective action that could stop Roberto and others like him, that could help mothers find their children, that could help children reclaim their identities, that could create a system of support where the legal system had failed. Roberto was arrested, eventually. Not for kidnapping. The statute of limitations had expired. The legal complexities of international abduction made prosecution difficult. The system that he had manipulated for years was not designed to protect children like me, but for fraud, for financial crimes, for the illegal activities that had funded his network of stolen children, that had allowed him to maintain his control, that had made his possession of me and others possible. He died in prison, not from violence, but from age, from illness, from the slow erosion of the control that had defined his existence. I didn't attend his funeral. I didn't send flowers. I noted his death as I noted the weather, as information that changed my calculations, that allowed me to move forward without the fear that had defined my entire life. I changed my name, legally, officially, finally. Not back to Alina. I couldn't go back, couldn't erase the years that had made me someone else, couldn't pretend that Carmen had never existed. But forward to something that acknowledged both, that incorporated both, that recognized the damage and the survival and the choice to become something new. I became Alina Carmen or Carmen Alina or simply myself, with the history that was mine, the damage that was mine, the identity that I chose rather than the identity that was imposed. I kept the name Carmen as a reminder, as a warning, as a connection to the child who had survived, who had endured, who had eventually found her way home. I opened a center. Las Carmen, for children stolen in divorces, for parents searching, for the prevention of parental kidnapping, for the support of families that had been destroyed by the inability of one parent to accept loss, to respect boundaries, to understand that children are not possessions but people, not trophies but relationships, not objects to be won but beings to be nurtured. The center grew. We helped mothers find their children, helped children find their identities, helped families navigate the legal and emotional complexities of abduction and return and reconciliation. We worked with governments, with international organizations, with the legal systems that had failed us, trying to improve them, to make them more responsive, to prevent the next Alina, the next Carmen, the next child who would be stolen and renamed and erased. The epilogue came years later. I was 45, established, surrounded by a community of survivors who understood without explanation. I received a letter from a woman in her 30s, one of the other Carmens who had found our center, who had reclaimed her name, who had visited her mother's grave, who had said the goodbye that I had been denied. "Thank you for naming what had no name," she wrote. "Thank you for turning the cage into a door. Thank you for being Alina so that I could be me." I read the letter in my office, in the center that bore the name of my imprisonment and my liberation, surrounded by the photographs of children who had been found, of families who had been reunited, of the ongoing work that would continue long after I was gone. I thought about Laura, about the letter she had written, about the photograph in the hospital, about the smile that had been her final gift to me, her final proof that love persists, that hope survives, that even in death, even in separation, even in the destruction of everything that should have been, the connection between mother and daughter cannot be fully erased. I thought about Roberto, about the locked door, about the new car and the presents, and the promise of celebration that had been the beginning of my imprisonment. I thought about the ways that love can be twisted into possession, that care can be transformed into control, that the desire to protect can become the justification for destruction. And I thought about Maria, about the bakery, about the corner where she had waited for decades, preserving the story that Laura had entrusted to her, maintaining the hope that I would eventually find my way home. I visited her regularly now, not as a client but as family, as the connection to the mother that I had lost, the grandmother that my children would never know, the history that had been stolen and partially recovered. "Your mother would be proud," Maria told me, often, repeatedly, the words that I needed to hear, that I couldn't fully believe, that I accepted as the gift they were intended to be. I don't know if Laura would be proud. I don't know what she would think of the center, of the name, of the life that I have built from the ruins of the one that was stolen. I don't know if she would understand the choice to keep Carmen, to transform the prison into the key, to use the damage as the foundation for healing. But I know that she would recognize me, that the smile in the photograph, the hand in mine, the love that persisted through 15 years of separation and deception and death, would know me, would accept me, would welcome me home. That's my story. If it spoke to you, comment below. If someone stole you and called it love, tell me. I'll read every word. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.